All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Touchdown Drives podcast. I am still your host, Case Kajani. I'm just a guy who loves the NFL, talking about the NFL and all things going on in the NFL. Sorry about the little hiatus, but we are back after 2 weeks, and by popular demand, the all around badass returns to the show, Mr. Aaron Jackson. Welcome back, Aaron.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Much appreciated. Obviously, it's been fun watching everything that's been going on. I'm happy to be back specifically this week because I just finally got healthy after dealing with COVID for a week. So I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm energized, and I'm ready to talk about some football.
Well, we're glad to hear that you're doing well. Sorry about that, man. Hopefully all is going well with you.
Yeah,
But
much better. I think I caught it. I went to a music festival, and at the end of the day, I didn't deal with it. It wasn't too bad. So I don't like saying it was worth it because I don't want anybody to get the virus. But like at the same time, I'm doing better. I'm stronger coming out of it. So we're
well,
good.
glad to hear it. As somebody who works with wants to be a teacher and works with kids all the time, you're when you're around a lot of people, you can get sick pretty quickly. So glad to see you're doing well. And what a wild 3 weeks, last 3 weeks in the NFL. We're gonna go ahead and get started with breaking down some of week seven's games. We'll start off with Monday Night Football because we gotta talk about the hottest offense in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, 281 yards, 5 touchdowns, a 158 passer rating in a 41-31 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This Ravens team started 0-2 this season. They have won 5 straight since. Their offense is averaging over 30 points a game. They are top 5 in the passing game as well as in the run. Aaron, are you shocked that Lamar is taking his MVP year last year to a whole nother level?
Well, it's been extremely impressive watching what he's been doing, and I think the last time we were on here together, the Ravens were either 0-2 or 1-2, and what they've done since then has just been absolutely insane. But one person that deserves a ton of credit in this offense too, I'm going to actually mention a couple of guys, one of which specifically who is maybe in the conversation for being MVP, as difficult as it is for a positional player outside of quarterback to win this award. Derrick Henry is like comeback player of the year. You might as well give him the whole trophy case right now. I mean, what he's been doing for that team is just otherworldly. 169 rushing yards this last week. Also had a receiving touchdown. And just listen to these. I broke down some stats earlier today, and it's just mind blowing to me. So the most rushing yards out of anybody since 2018 is Derrick Henry with 9,885. After that, number two, Derrick Henry, after his contract he got in 2020, 7,028 yards. In 5 seasons, he has 7,028 yards. And I want to say he's dealt with a couple minor injuries during that time, too. So, I mean, it just goes to show how impressive of a running back he is. I mean, he's maybe the most impressive running back of our generation right now. And we're just here witnessing greatness on the football field. But another person that certainly deserves their flowers, too, and it's not Zay Flowers. I'm not trying to make a little bit of a joke there, but seriously, Mark Andrews, what a comeback he's had after looking like a complete and utter no-show the first 4 weeks of the season. His last couple of weeks, 3 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown against the Commanders. And then this week, 4 receptions for 41 and 2 touchdowns, making himself look like he's a positional impact player there once again. He saw what Isaiah Likely was doing and said, step aside, I'm getting my position back. And man, I'll tell you what, he has definitely been a huge role for getting this offense even more power than they already were. And like you said, Lamar Jackson is the engine that just keeps things running right now. And yeah, if I was anybody in the AFC, I would not want to play the Baltimore Ravens. As good as that North Division is, and as good as the AFC is, the Ravens look absolutely unstoppable right now.
I want to just give so much credit to a guy like Lamar because last year he had the highest completion percentage, the highest amount of passing yards of his career. But it just seemed like outside of the rookie Zay Flowers, uh, Odell Beckham, who was just basically a deep shot guy, and then Nelson Aguilar, Bateman, and then Andrews was injured for a good part of last year. People forget before Mark Andrews had his little injury issues and all this other stuff, he was Lamar Jackson's number one target, number two target, number three target, number four target. Like, he did not throw basically to anybody else outside of Mark Andrews. This guy was a Pro Bowl tight end for many, many, many years before he suffered those injuries. So it's good to see him get back to his all-pro level. Of course, you mentioned Derrick Henry. The guy is a freaking beat. He broke an 81-yarder late in that game against Tampa Bay that basically put it away. They were already winning anyway, but Tampa Bay had that little mini comeback late in the fourth quarter. But Derrick Henry's been an absolute beast. I still remember the very first play of that game against the Buffalo Bills. He had a 79-yard rushing touchdown as the very first play of the game. That's how it was broken open. He's been unbelievable. And despite some issues with the Ravens secondary, they have been doing a very good job of slowing down quarterbacks. Yes, Baker Mayfield threw for over 370 passing yards. Yes, he threw 3 touchdowns, but he got picked off twice. They were up 41-18 before Tampa Bay made that fake comeback back towards the end of the game. So they're doing a very good job. Now, if I were to pose this question to you, Mr. Jackson, right now, the 6-0 Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is still playing mediocre football, but that Chiefs defense is one of the most impressive units in football. Who are you taking right now? Are you taking Lamar Jackson and this high-powered offense, or are you going with number 15, the new Tom Brady and the Kansas City Chiefs if these two meet up again?
Well, it's also important to note that the Chiefs, as of I believe today or yesterday, just got DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm sure we might talk about that a little bit more.
Insane.
But one thing I'd say is it's hard to pick the Ravens when it comes to the postseason because we've seen them fall apart time and time again when they've looked like one of the better teams in the AFC. But again, this is a completely different Ravens team when you add Derrick Henry to the mix because he's able to do so much in the backfield, even when it comes to the passing game. And then, you kind of alluded to it, but guys like Marlon Humphrey and Roquan Smith are playing out of their minds right now on defense. I would probably pick the Ravens right now, but a team that I still think, even though they lost this last weekend, a team that I still think deserves to be the dark horse in that conversation, the AFC, is the Houston Texans. I think that any of those 3 teams right now certainly look like the top in the AFC. The Chiefs I don't know what they've been doing. They've been pulling off some black magic to somehow stay at 6-0, but they're finding ways to get wins, and that's all you need to do in the National Football League. But in terms of utter strength and dominance, the Ravens look like the best team right now in the AFC, and it's hard to not bet. It's hard to bet against them. So I would say right now it's hard not to pick Baltimore, but when it comes to the postseason, it's also very hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I think that would be a very fun matchup if we do get that in the AFC Championship for sure.
I mean, this was last year's AFC Championship game. Baltimore was the number 1 seed. The Chiefs were the 4th seed, and Patrick Mahomes was playing only his 2nd road playoff game of his career. And he, lo and behold, goes in, wins that game, wins the Super Bowl. There's like a new rule now in football. They used to do it with a guy who won 7 Super Bowls, who won 5 Super Bowl MVPs. His name's Tom Brady. As long as Patrick Mahomes is on the other side, they're going to have a great chance to win because he is just one of these legendary sport athletes that if he's on the field, your team has a great shot to win every night, regardless of they don't have Rashee Rice, who's out for the year after tearing his ACL. Regardless of no Isaiah Pacheco. They just grabbed DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans, a steal for the Kansas City Chiefs. They need a number 1 guy. And the best part for the Chiefs is if Travis Kelce gets unlocked, he is the ultimate cheat code for the Kansas City Chiefs. But you mentioned both the Texans and the Ravens. I'll give you a 4th dark horse. How about the Buffalo Bills? They just grabbed a pretty good wide receiver themselves in Amari Cooper. They destroyed the Titans 32-10. Josh Allen over 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. The defense is getting healthy. And Allen is one of those. And Allen has thrown 12 touchdowns this season, no interceptions, over 300 passing yards per game. Could the Buffalo Bills make some noise in this conference? What do you think about that one?
Yeah. I mean, and they arguably in the AFC at least, they're probably in one of the easier divisions in the AFC, because they're going to steamroll their way through New York and New England. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what Miami does now with Tua back in the mix, but they still have some injury issues when it comes to their offensive and defensive line. But yeah, the Bills certainly look like a strong team out there as well. No disrespect to James Cook, I'd say they probably have one of the weaker rushing games out of all the teams that we've mentioned. But one other thing I wanted to allude back to, talking about the Ravens, is when we talk about them in the postseason, despite, they made the AFC Championship game last year and they've had some runs, never count out John Harbaugh's ability to blow a football game. I think he is one of the more overrated coaches in the league, because we have seen time and time again, whether it's the regular season or the postseason, Baltimore having a 10 to 14 point lead late in the game and finding a way to still blow it. We saw it in week 2 against Vegas. So, I got to keep that in mind out there too. But I think that's what makes the AFC so fun to watch, is because there are legitimately 4 or 5 teams out there that have a shot to come out of the AFC, whereas the NFC is a little bit more top heavy, although we're seeing this year that there are a few more contenders that have thrown their name in the hat. But yeah, I think Buffalo is certainly a team that can make it out there as well. It's just also hard for me to bet for Buffalo until I see them take down Kansas City in the playoffs, as we've seen them fall to them time and time again as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, they have to run into basically the Tom Brady of this era in Patrick Mahomes. As long as 1587, Andy Reid and Spags are together, they'll be the favorites no matter how good you stack up the teams, because Mahomes is just that level of athlete where you can't just disrespect the guy. And he hasn't thrown a touchdown in the past 2 weeks, and the Chiefs still are winning games. It's unbelievable. Wow, how good is this Chiefs defense? Like, Spags is doing a hell of a job. He could be a head coach next year. What are your thoughts on the 6-0 Chiefs?
Most certainly, yeah, he 100% could be. It's absolutely insane. Like, I actually have Patrick Mahomes in one of my fantasy leagues, and I've considered dropping him. Like, the fact that I'm in a position where, like, I'm starting Jared Goff over Patrick Mahomes, and I'm considering dropping Patrick Mahomes, is just insane. If this was the case going into the season, I think people would have called me crazy. But again, they're finding ways to win. They're also going up against banged up teams. Of course, they went up against the Saints when they played them a couple weeks ago. They were banged up. They just played the 49ers, which we'll talk about in a moment, and obviously they're banged up to smithereens right now. But yeah, I mean, they have a very impressive defense. They haven't. I don't know if they've allowed even 20 points this season. Kansas City, they will find a way to win, whether it's putting points on the board or whether it's holding teams down. I mean, this year it looks like it's the defense getting the job done, and again, it's hard to discount how good of a coach Andy Reid is, and obviously, who he's got on his staff. So, I think right now the Chiefs still have to be the clear favorite to come out of the AFC, but it's gonna be a battle. It's gonna be a dogfight out there.
Yes. Out of 8 weeks, the Chiefs have only allowed one opponent to score 20 points, and that was week 1 against the Ravens. That's right. Defense is playing unbelievable right now. That is after trading a all-pro corner in L'Jarius Sneed away to the Tennessee Titans to clear cap. But how about the young fella, Trent McDuffie, stepping into his spot and playing just about as well as Sneed? So that top of the AFC is going to be a fun race to watch. Let's hope for just a really great. These teams are healthy. These teams are locked in, and we just get some fun postseason matchups.
I got to mention, because you mentioned Trent McDuffie, because I have my own high school sports podcast. There is a game in the country that is the top 2 high school teams facing off this week, and that is Mater Dei and St. John Bosco down in Southern California. Trent McDuffie, fun fact, actually played for both schools, and once you know it, both schools were kicking ass at that time as well. So McDuffie, he's come through some great programs to get to the NFL, and now he's with the best program in the NFL.
Yep. But that top of the AFC race is going to be a fun one to watch the rest of the year. Shout out to the Baltimore Ravens for actually making this interesting. But speaking of a hot team, let's get to the NFC East leading. Yeah, I said NFC East leading Washington Commanders. Yeah, that's right. The Commanders scoring over 40 a game. Jaden Daniels is looking phenomenal right now, leading the league in completion percentage, completing over 75% of his passes. This is an unbelievable story right now. Even CJ Stroud didn't look this good this early in year one. What do you have to say about Jayden Daniels and the Red Hot Commanders?
We could talk about Jayden Daniels, and I'll say this. I think right now he's probably the clear rookie of the year leading candidate. He also, I would even argue, you could throw him in the MVP race right now with the guys that we've mentioned in previous weeks, like Baker, guys like Sam Darnold. I think that he definitely has thrown his hat in the race for MVP as well. But the thing that was amazing to me is, well, it's the Carolina Panthers, and obviously, they're going to be likely one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. They proved that they can get the job done even without him too, because they have so many pieces on both sides of the ball. Marcus Mariota, who's their backup, came in and even got the job done and had a very solid game this last weekend. Brian Robinson obviously is getting the job done on the ground. But they also have a really great defense behind them. They have a veteran in Bobby Wagner. They got some really good young talent on the secondary as well. They're just a good team all around, and it's the best the Commanders have probably been. They weren't even this good with RG3. I mean, they're better than they were with RG3. This is the best they've been in decades right now, and so it's fun to finally see a team other than the other three that always get mentioned finally come out and get something done, because we always are talking about the Cowboys or we're always talking about the Eagles. And this year it's the Commanders that are making some noise, which is a good change. And it's nice to see, a team and an organization turn around from being one of the worst teams in football just a few short years ago to now being, at the top of the mountain or near the top of the mountain in the NFC. So they're definitely a team that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on going forward, and watch out for Jayden Daniels, as he certainly has a stake for being MVP.
I was looking at CJ Stroud's year last year and comparing it to Jayden Daniels, because that's the closest guy we can compare him to in year one, because Stroud had this unbelievable year. The Texans went 9-8. They won the AFC South. They won the playoff game, and now they've taken the next step. But even CJ Stroud in his first 5 games was only 2-3. This team was a losing team. Jayden Daniels has this team at a above 500 record, and you said that their defense is good. Their defense is actually the second worst in the league in terms of the run and the pass. But it's their explosive, red-hot offense that basically is just creating a buzzsaw for teams, because nobody can hang with them. Although I will say just a little bit of an argument against the Commanders, their wins have come against teams like the Browns, who are horrible and just lost their quarterback for the year, the Panthers, who are also horrible, the Cardinals, who are mediocre. So they're beating the teams they should be beating. That's the important thing. And
I agree. I will say I was still pretty impressed at what they did against Arizona, because I believe that was when they played Arizona, that was the week before Arizona beat the Niners, and it was the week after, I think, Arizona I want to say got their first win, or were very competitive, and they limited Kyler Murray to under 150 passing yards, and I still think that they did a decent job with the run, but yeah, I mean, they're certainly limiting teams, and obviously you're getting the job done on the other end, but at least 3 of the last 4 weeks, I have at least been impressed by some of the pieces of what I've seen on defense, and Bobby Wagner, who is obviously, way past his prime, still showing that, he can get the job done and lead a team out there. It's been, it's fun to see. It's almost like all the pieces kind of coming together at the right time.
And I totally agree with you. And they did put up a pretty solid, a very good showing against against the Ravens. They lost 20-13. It was a close game. But again, when it comes to playoff time, these young teams with this explosive offense and a mediocre defense, can the defense get the job done if the offense gets schemed out of by good playoff teams that are going to be pointing to these certain matchups? Like Washington is a very explosive run game. Jeremy McNichols coming out of nowhere to be a very good premier back in this league. Brian Robinson's had a great year. Daniels is a very good running quarterback. So will they be schemed out of? That is going to be the big question for these guys. But I love legendary sports anchor Scott Van Pelt said this about Jayden Daniels. He is confident, but not arrogant. Like he has the swagger. He knows he wants to be great, but he's not cocky about it. He's this quiet, humble kid. And wide receiver Terry McLaurin said this about him. His aura, his leadership, you just want to run through a wall and play for this guy. The Commanders have been probably the biggest shock of the year so far. So I just hope that they can keep this momentum up because that phone booth arena basically in Washington, they have had the garbage sports teams of the last 40 to 50 years. All their teams have not been good, whether it's been the Capitals or the Mystic or the equally incompetent Washington Wizards. So it's just nice for the Washington, D.C. area to have a good team for once. But
Yeah. The best star that they've had coming out of that area is Alexander Ovechkin, who is close to hitting a milestone in his career. But outside of that, it has been pretty bleak for Washington sports teams. But I just wanted to mention real quick, I just looked it up, and Daniels right now is currently seventh in the MVP odds behind some very talented players like Lamar, Josh Allen, Jordan Love, Stroud, and others. But the fact that you have a rookie that high just shows the respect and love that he's getting right now.
He's been unbelievable, and I just want this for Commanders fans because they had to go through the John Snyder, the emails and stuff like that, and the toxic work environment. Now they got a new ownership, and they're playing really well. So I just hope that they can keep it up. But speaking of the top of the MVP ladder, you mentioned Jordan Love. Let's get to the red hot NFC North. All teams in that division above 500 records. The Bears, Caleb Williams has really started to come on as of late. The Packers beat the Texans on a walk-off field goal. The Bears crushed the Jaguars in London. They were off on a bye. The Lions, they win again against the Vikings, who were previously unbeaten on a walk-off field goal. And the Vikings, who are still 5-1, who are still very, very good. What do you have to say about the red hot NFC North? How many of these teams are making the playoffs?
Maybe them all.
I think so. It might be.
I was talking. I mean, the Bears are the one that's probably right on the borderline right now. But I was talking with a couple of friends from work earlier, and we were saying, it's hard not to bet against any of these teams making the postseason right now. I have to go back and look, but through 6 or 7 games, having a division with over 75%, I think they're a combined 76% win percentage right now in the NFC North is just absolutely unheard of. Of course, the Lions just handed the Vikings their first loss, but I mean that was a game that came down to the wire. Arguably maybe game of the season so far that could have gone either way, and the Lions just managed to pull it out. I obviously as a Cal football fan, I watched Jared Goff in college, and I always knew, hey, this guy is super capable. He was throwing for 400 yards. It felt like a game with the Golden Bears, and he's finally found a system where he has weapons, and he's finding ways to get the job done. They have a very dynamic run game. Of course, they did unfortunately last week lose Aiden Hutchinson to that absolutely disgusting looking injury. Although the crazy thing is, I've heard that there's a chance he could even be back for playoffs, which is just nuts after seeing his leg bend the wrong way. But the fact, when you have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the backfield, and then you have pieces like Amon-Ra St. Brown, another Southern California high school football player, by the way, and other guys out there like Sam Laporta and stuff. I mean, he has the weapons that he needs, but then on the flip side, you've got the Vikings who as I mentioned, Sam Darnold, MVP candidate. They just got Aaron Jones back healthy this week, and he opened the game with a big touchdown. Obviously, Jaden Jefferson out there. This is a very, very fun division, the most fun division in football. We could be talking about 4 teams that could have 10 wins come the end of the season, and I'm here for it. I mean, obviously, I'm a 49er fan, but at the end of the day, I just want to watch good football. And, seeing a team like the Lions or the Vikings go far, it would be something a little bit different, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it. Let's see what this division can do.
We were just mocking Washington sports fans. How about Detroit sports teams over the last 20 to 25 years? The last Detroit sports team that won a championship was the Detroit Pistons in 2004. The Lions hadn't won a playoff game prior to last year in 30 years. Like, Detroit has suffered through some of the worst organizations the worst. Like the Tigers just made the playoffs for the first time in what, 20, 25 years? Like these teams have been garbage. And now the Lions finally have given this city hope for a championship.
It's hard for me to find love for the Detroit Tigers as an Oakland A's fan, knowing how many times Justin Verlander owned us in the postseason. But I will say I do feel for Detroit sports fans for sure. It's been an extremely tough time for Detroit basketball fans, football fans. The Red Wings have made the postseason a couple times, and the Tigers, have made the postseason a couple times, or a few times. Yeah, it's definitely it's cool to see just a super energetic Ford Field out there. When there were seasons this team went 0-16 or 2-14, and now all of a sudden, they're looking like the best team in the NFC, arguably. So it's definitely fun to see, a city of sports fans that have gone through it, finally passionate and actually being able to, enjoy some success. And, Dan Campbell's one heck of a coach. I mean, I'd argue probably maybe the front runner to win Coach of the Year right now. And it's definitely a fun team to watch.
The most complete football team probably in the NFL. Their O-line is one of the best, probably the best right now in the NFL with Decker. I mean, they were up so big on the Cowboys the week prior to the 2 weeks prior to the Vikings. They were throwing trick plays to their offensive linemen. That's how fun that offense is. But all credit in the world goes to Dan Campbell and GM Brad Holmes. What these two have done is completely shifted the culture in Detroit. Jared Goff was basically an afterthought before he went to Detroit. They were just wanting Matthew Stafford because the Rams just wanted Matthew Stafford so they could go win a Super Bowl because they didn't think Goff was good enough to win a Super Bowl. The Rams won a Super Bowl, good for them, but they might not be winning anything for a while. And now Jared Goff has this Lions team who is incredibly, incredibly young, probably in contention for many, many, many years to come. And Aiden Hutchinson going down with that broken tibia and fibula sure hurts, but this team is still very, very talented. The offense is still very explosive, but they still have to go through a buzzsaw of teams in their own division. The Packers right now have a top 5 defense in the NFL, and if Jordan Love can stop turning over the football, they're a serious contender. The Bears, if Caleb Williams can continue his hot play, we're about to find out how good he is because he's going up against his draft mate and Jaden Daniels this week. That's going to be a fun one to watch. But the Bears still have a top 5 defense in the NFL. Ever since Montez Sweat got there, that Bears D has been one of the best in the league. So, yeah, and of course the Vikings with Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell is a play calling master with Jonathan Grenard, who just got in there. The Vikings still lead the league in interception. Vikings lead the league in takeaways. They lead the league in sacks. This is going to be one hell of a race to see who's going to be in and who's going to be out. It's probably going to be dependent on quarterback play. Can Sam Darnold continue to keep this up, to keep pace with guys like Jared Goff and Jordan Love, who are among the NFL's elite quarterbacks, but Darnold is making a case to get a big contract next year.
Yeah, and I just to go back to the Packers a little bit. It's one player that's kind of stood out to me is Tucker Kraft because going into the season it was looking like Musgrave was going to be tied in one, and the fact that Kraft has gone in there, and I want to say it was a couple weeks ago in the win over the Rams, he had 2 touchdowns in that game. He gets another touchdown on Sunday, and he's really integrated himself as a major part of that offense. And then again, just going back to Detroit. Once again earlier, just what a fun couple of weeks it was for Jared Goff to go from catching his first touchdown. You mentioned the trick plays they do, catching his first touchdown of his career on Monday Night Football, and then going out after bye week and blowing out the Cowboys on the day before his birthday. So, yeah, again, there's just so many fun stories and so many fun players and moments that are coming out of this division right now. It's by far the purest, best form of football, it feels like right now in the NFL.
Oh, yeah. It's going back to the old 90s days with all those great, with Barry Sanders and Mike Singletary and all these great Hall of Fame players. It's going to be a fun division to watch. But now, because we are 49er fans, we got to rip the Band-Aid off. the 49ers lose once again, 28-18 to the Kansas City Chiefs. They fall to 3-4. They lose star wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk for the entire year and probably all of next year after tearing his ACL and MCL. Aaron, would you do me a favor? Rip the Niners Band-Aid off. Can you rip them for me so I don't have to?
I would argue right now maybe they don't have enough big enough band-aid to keep on because they just keep having more and more players going down with injury, and it's crazy. I think I counted earlier just their injury report since the start of the season, and they've had 21 different guys who've at least been questionable or missed a game, and that's across offense and defense and special teams because of course we still don't have Jake Moody right now, who likely won't be back until after the bye. The one thing I'd say is this for Niner fans is the small amount of hope and why I think that door is still, well, it's smallly cracked. It's still cracked for them to have a successful year. It really comes down to this week when they play Dallas. If they need to win this Sunday night against Dallas, or I think they might be done. If they win and they go 4-4, they go into bye week, which is probably the best possible time for a bye week. It's looking like after Kyle Shanahan addressed the media, I want to say yesterday, that they're going to get Jake Moody and Christian McCaffrey back out of the bye, which is absolutely huge, especially McCaffrey. And then they'll get Greenlaw back a couple weeks after that. But you mentioned Aiyuk being done for the year, and it's devastating because, obviously he just signed that contract. And I mean, it's not like he was playing phenomenal before that. I mean, I think the front office is kind of right now regretting maybe not trading him to Pittsburgh or picking up another piece like Courtland Sutton for him. And we've seen, other issues with him too, but obviously you never want your star player to go down with injury. Jordan Mason, he's still running the ball pretty well, but he definitely has not been as effective as he was the first couple weeks of the season. And again, that just comes down to the run game not being as efficient as it would with Christian McCaffrey in there. You add on to that, George Kittle looks like he might be questionable for Sunday night. Debo looked like he was going to play in the game, and then all of a sudden went out during warm-ups and ended up coming down with pneumonia. He looks like he might be healthy come this Sunday. But I mean, they're having to go to the third, fourth string receivers, and your most healthy receiver right now is a guy that just got shot in the chest a couple months ago in Ricky Pearsall. I mean, that's just not a good sign right now. It feels like 2020 all over again. And then one other thing I got to mention is well, obviously all of this doesn't help in terms of having weapons out there on offense. I'm not going to let Brock Purdy just go. He's been mediocre, to say the least. There were many throws he's made in multiple games this year, especially on Sunday against the Chiefs, that were extremely questionable, got away from him, and it's just completely uncharacteristic for a guy of his, that has the poise that he does. They were in big moments. They got down into the red zone twice, and that's been the Niners' Achilles heel this year, for lack of a better term, is the red zone. They've been horrible in the red zone, one of the worst red zone teams in the entire league, and he threw 2 interceptions in the red zone that really cost the 49ers that football game. So, I think the jury's still out on really how good of a quarterback Brock Purdy is, as much as it hurts me to say that. He did have a couple of rushing touchdowns in the game, but really, that didn't matter at that point. This team still has a long way to go. I was kind of devastated when I saw the news earlier that Robert Saleh signed for the Packers, because I would have loved to seen him come back and play a role on our defense and try to straighten guys up. Because to be honest with you, outside of Fred Warner, Lenore had a good game on Sunday. He's looked pretty mediocre this season when he has played and has been healthy. Charvarius Ward's been a complete and utter no-show. Nick Bosa's been okay, but he hasn't been anything special. It feels like a lot of guys who were putting a lot of money towards and are getting a lot of time out there on the field just really aren't cohesing that well, and it's the worst case scenario right now. But again, the fact that all of that has been bad and has gone wrong, and this team still has a chance to succeed if they can win on Sunday, shows how talented this team is and the fact that they can still get the job done. So we'll see what happens, but it's definitely not looking good right now if you're a 49er fan.
Not at all. I will, in the defense's defense, and Nick Sorensen has taken a lot of heat as 49ers defensive coordinator. The defense actually did play a very solid game. They held Patrick Mahomes to under 150 passing yards. They picked him off twice. No touchdown. other than the 33-yard run where he breaks everybody, which Patrick Mahomes does that to a lot of teams. He's just that good. And then he shoves Malik Mustafa out of the way into the end zone like a bully. That was mean. But again, if your defense is going to be on the field so much, eventually they're just going to get fatigued. And they held the Chiefs to only 3.5 yards a carry, so they did a good job in the run game. It's just the problem is Brock Purdy threw 3 interceptions. And in Brock Purdy's defense, you're not expecting to go out there with Ronnie Bell, Jacob Cowing, Chris Conley, and Ricky Pearsall as your top 4 receivers, and against the Chiefs defense, who is very good at blitzing and scheming and making those fake scheme coverages to fool guys into making bad decisions. But Brock Purdy, he addressed it. He knows he has to play a lot better. Kyle Shanahan had words for him. They had a long conversation. I feel like that they're going to get this done against Dallas because Dallas is coming off the worst home loss in the Jerry Jones era, 47-9 against the Detroit Lions. They looked absolutely horrible. Dak Prescott threw 2 picks himself. And they're also banged up. No Micah Parsons in that game. No DeMarcus Lawrence. Who do you think wins this game? The battle of the injured teams, really.
The Injury Bowl, yeah, the Injury Bowl. I'll say this right now, the fortunate thing for the 49ers is as hurt as they are and as banged up as they are, and even though they're not cohesing, you're going against maybe the most dysfunctional organization in football in the Dallas Cowboys right now. I mean, we're talking about an owner and a coach who can't even get along right now, and it's amazing to me that Mike McCarthy's even still with that team. I have a couple of friends who are Cowboys fans, and they want to blow their brains out the fact that Jerry Jones has not gotten rid of Mike McCarthy yet. And you've got Jerry Jones that's going out there on Dallas radio and is threatening to get radio hosts fired, when in reality, he has not done anything substantial to do anything for free agency for this team in the last 4 or 5 plus years. I mean, he could have gotten Derrick Henry for $8 or $9 million in the offseason and chose to pass on that. Now their best running back is Rico Dowdle. I mean, that right there is just pathetic for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, and no disrespect to Dowdle. I mean, he's had a couple of games where he's shown out and actually looked okay. But I mean, you had Ezekiel Elliott was going to be your running back 1 going into the season, and he's been a complete and utter no-show. I'll say this, that I do think, I'm going to pick the 49ers to win this game. I'm cautiously optimistic for this weekend. If Debo plays, I think that they've got a really good chance too. It's going to be interesting to see if he plays or not. But the Cowboys look complete and utterly dysfunctional right now. And the Niners are at home, and this would be a huge win for them going into bye week. But I mean, yeah, it's hard to pick for sure. There's certainly an argument to make either way, but I'm going to go with the 49ers. They always seem to find a way to bounce back after they have a loss. And one thing that's very ironic and one thing that I absolutely hate is it seems, and I think it's literally been every week this season, when the Niners lose, the Raiders lose. When the Raiders win, the Niners win. So I guess pay attention to that Raiders score on Sunday, and that'll tell you maybe how Sunday Night Football will go.
And yet the Raiders have less wins than the Niners do. It's very insane. But for numbers for Dallas,
I think there's like 1 or 2 is different. But
right. Yeah. But here's some numbers for the Dallas Cowboys. They have the worst rushing offense in the league. They are bottom 10 in the league with the passing game. They're bottom 10 in the league in terms of their pass defense, and they're 29th in the league against the run. If this is not the week the 49ers do it, shut the season down and tank for a top pick. And, there's a lot of Niner fans that have been chanting for Kyle Shanahan's head. If you're John Lynch in that organization, if this season goes into a disappointment, do you look to make a coaching change with Kyle Shanahan? Because it's been 7 years with him, and they've gone to 2 Super Bowls. They haven't won a Super Bowl, but would you fire Kyle Shanahan and just tear this thing down and rebuild again?
See, that's the thing that's so difficult is it's hard to justify that when you have all the injuries that you have right now and it looks like 2020, because there's not much you can necessarily do to put that on Coach Shanahan in that case. And obviously he's taken you to the promised land a couple of times. Certainly some bad coaching decisions down the stretch in 2020. But in last year's game, it's just one of those games that both teams played well and it could have gone either way. And the Chiefs managed to pull it out in overtime. You can maybe argue, hey, do you take the ball to start overtime? Do you not? But at the end of the day, I'm not going to blame Kyle Shanahan for that. Again, just a couple other things to add to Dallas and just how dysfunctional they are. I just got to pile on my Derrick Henry point. Has more touchdowns himself this season than the entire Dallas Cowboys team. It blows my mind how dumb of an owner Jerry Jones is. He's the worst owner. I can't say he's the worst owner in sports because John Fisher happens to exist, but he is the worst owner in football probably out there. And another thing too, and I saw this earlier before we started the show. Brandon Aubrey has jury duty right now, and he couldn't get out of it. So, I mean, he likely will still play Sunday because obviously, there's no jury duty Sunday. But the fact that, there's a chance he won't be available to practice this week or wouldn't be available for the game because of that is also just another thing to add on to the Cowboys saga right now. While the Niners have a lot going on, the Dallas Cowboys have even more going on. So that's why I feel the Niners still have a chance. But to answer your overarching question, I definitely think there will be a lot of fans that will argue for his head. My question to the 49ers would be, 49ers fans, I should say, would be, okay, who do you hire? Who's going to be better than Kyle Shanahan? Because as much as Kyle Shanahan, I've had some disagreements with what he's done. Name me a better offensive mind that can be that your head coach in the league. I mean,
Ben Johnson of the Detroit Lions.
I would still say I think Kyle Shanahan has a better resume. I mean, it's so hard to justify getting rid of a coach who's made it to 2 Super Bowls for you, despite having that generational talent. I would say that especially if it comes down to injuries, I think they have to keep Shanahan. If it's a matter of they have these guys healthy and they still find a way to not get it done, kind of like the 2014 team and Jim Harbaugh's last year before he got fired. Okay, certainly in that case, I'm willing to listen and say, hey, we're 9-8, we're 8-9, we barely made it, or we didn't make the playoffs, and we had our guys healthy for the second half of the season. Yeah, that's fine. Cut his head off. I don't care. But if they're, genuinely hurt and, they are struggling to get healthy and they're, just finding ways to barely lose games, it's hard for me to say, get rid of him in that situation.
Very true. And I pray for all of us Niner fans that they, A, win this week, B, get the bye and get McCaffrey back, because once McCaffrey comes back, that red zone offense flips on its head. They were the best red zone team with him in the league last year. They are the worst. They're one of the worst this year. So once McCaffrey gets back, they should be rocking and rolling. And this team is so veteran-laden, so talented, so focused. And once Dre Greenlaw comes back, I guarantee you that run defense is going to fix itself, because Dre is that yapping mouth that makes this team go, particularly against the run. When he went down, I think that it took some energy out of the Niners in that Super Bowl. But when Dre comes back, he will make all the difference, especially in Talanoa Hufanga, all-pro safety. He's going to come back soon, too. Once he comes back, I think that secondary also looks a lot better. But I think Kyle Shanahan, I think John Lynch know they have to make a move at some point for a receiver or an offensive or a linebacker or a secondary help. But I think they'll do something at the deadline. I'm not sure what, but I think they're going to do something. But
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, special rule for Dre Greenlaw. When the Niners go out on the field on defense, he can walk out there, not run out there. He can walk out there onto the field. We do not want any freak injuries like last time.
Yeah, it was just like a freak thing where he just all of a sudden went down and boom, torn Achilles, he's done. I'm like, that was crazy. But praying for all of us Niner fans for all of our sanity. And before we go, we're just going to talk about one final game. It's Sunday Night Football. The Jets taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. How about Russell Wilson in his Pittsburgh debut? Almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, as the Steelers put up 37 points. They haven't put up 30 points in back-to-back games in over 5 years. They take down the Jets 37-15 in Davante Adams' debut after being traded from the Raiders. How about Russell Wilson making his case for QB1 in Pittsburgh?
I'll tell you what a great problem for the Steelers to have, having Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, who have both proven they can get the job done this year. I'm not ready to say that Russell's going to be the for sure starter the rest of the season, because we could easily see him have two good games and then go back to playing like his old ways, and then they bring Justin Fields back in the mix. But I mean, you're 5-2. They look like a team that can certainly be a dark horse in the AFC as well. I mean, it's hard. Again, I think that the Ravens are clearly the best team in that division right now. But George Pickens is a phenomenal weapon to have out there for whoever's at the quarterback role. They've been also a very impressive defense to watch too. So they're going to be a team that's going to be there come the end of the season for sure. It's just a matter of what can they do come the playoffs. But that was definitely an eye opener. Did not expect that performance out of Russell Wilson. That has to be the best he's played since before he was in Denver.
No doubt. Like he looked like 2019 Russell Wilson, where he was leading the league in touchdown passes, throwing some of his deep balls. Mike Tomlin said it. He wanted a spark on offense. He wanted more of those downfield shots. And Justin Fields, credit to him, he had a great role. He was a very serviceable quarterback. But Russell Wilson, if he's Seattle Russell, I just think for him and Sean Payton, it just never quite clicked in Denver. And with him now in Pittsburgh with that offense, he looks like old prime Russell Wilson again. And yes, maybe he's lost some of his athleticism, obviously, because he's gotten older, but he never lost the arm talent. And he's got a pretty cannon of an arm. And he's got guys on the outside like George Pickens and all-pro tight end Pat Freiermuth. You got Calvin Austin, a good deep ball guy. You got Najee Harris. You got Jaylen Warren. You got that defense with TJ Watt. And it was just a great win for Pittsburgh. And you talk about Jerry Jones being the worst owner in the NFL. Are we going to not talk about Woody Johnson with the Jets? Because they went all in. They got Aaron Rodgers back. They got Davante Adams in the fold. And the Jets still have one of the worst offenses in the league. Their defense is banged up, but they got Hassan Reddick back. Finally, after 7 weeks on contract holdout. Like at 2-5 right now, should we just write off the Jets?
I said before the season started that the Jets were going to, I thought before the season started, the Jets were going to start a little bit slow. I think they're still going to find a way to get 8 or 9 wins. It's not going to be enough to make the playoffs. They're going to be like borderline and just miss out. I don't think they're going to be complete and utter trash, but they certainly don't look great right now. Rodgers hasn't played great. I don't think it's all his fault. It's just so weird seeing a group of guys like that just not, be not work well together. But they also have a super older team out there playing football too. The only reason I say Jerry Jones is because he somehow finds a way to do less with more. And in this situation, you could argue you have a lot of talent out there, but I don't know. I would still say that Jerry Jones is a worse owner, but Woody's not great either. And it's crazy when you have guys like Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams that you're not finding a way to at least get one touchdown between the two of them. And you would think that'd be one of the better wide receiver duos in the league. But Aaron Rodgers ain't getting any younger, and that run game ain't getting any better.
I mean, Breece Hall's been playing outstanding football, but the Jets right now, I'm a Sacramento Kings fan, so I know about the Kings' lengthy playoff drought. Right now, the Jets' playoff drought is the longest in all 4 major sports. They're sitting at 14 years. They haven't made the playoffs since 2010. They're sitting on a 14-year playoff drought. This team wants to make the playoffs, but they're not very good, and they're relying on a 40-year-old coming off Achilles surgery. And when he retires, who's going to be the quarterback? I mean, you're going to get Tim Boyle again? That worked out great. I just don't know. I mean, they fired Robert Saleh. It hasn't really worked. I just don't know with the Jets anymore. Like, they have great skilled guys. They just don't have a quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers, he's had good moments, but he just isn't the same Aaron Rodgers anymore, especially coming off the Achilles injury. Like, I just don't believe in the Jets to do anything significant. They'll probably beat the Patriots because the Patriots are horrible. Shout out Drake May, though. He's been playing solidly. But I just have no faith in the Jets to do anything, and they'll probably be right back here again next year. And shout out to the Steelers. I think they're going to make that North real interesting with the Ravens. And now the Bengals, who started slow, they got to 3-4. Yes, they beat the Panthers and they beat the Giants and Browns, but those teams are horrible. But Joe Burrow's starting to look like Joe Burrow again. Quietly, the second highest QBR in the league. And tasteless Cleveland fans cheering Deshaun Watson leaving that game. Don't do that. That's wrong. Even though you don't like the guy, please don't do that. That's very mean. Yes, he's had his issues. Yes, he's been horrible. But you don't cheer a guy tearing his Achilles. That's just wrong. But that North has gotten real interesting now with Pittsburgh, and now Cincinnati slowly trying to get back to the top of that division as well with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and they're kind of another case where the Bengals have beaten teams that they should beat. Outside of a couple games, they still should have won as well. But yeah, I mean, I think the Bengals will be in there too. They were actually one of my preseason picks to.
They gave the Ravens a run for their money. I mean, if it wasn't for an Evan McPherson missed field goal, they probably beat the Ravens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, they put up a fight against the Kansas City, and they put up a fight against Washington as well. But I think that there'll be a team that'll be a playoff team. I think they're going to find their way in, maybe be around a 10-win team. But it's just such a buzzsaw of a division right now that it's hard to bet against a Baltimore. Of course, Pittsburgh, on the outside looking in, but Baltimore just looks so good right now.
Agreed. And last thing before we go, I just want to get to the banged up NFC South. Tampa Bay and that loss to the Ravens lose both their all-pro wide receivers. Chris Godwin out for the rest of the year, dislocated ankle. Mike Evans out the next 3 weeks after the bye with an injured hamstring. You look at the Saints. Derek Carr's been out with an oblique injury. Rashid Shaheed is done for the year, season-ending ankle surgery. Chris Olave's been out with the concussion. Paulson Adebo, one of their top corners, he's done for the year. He broke his femur. And then Atlanta, who's not banged up, but just got throttled by the Seahawks, giving up 34 points, and Kirk Cousins throws 2 picks. I mean, we were talking about this division the last time we were here is, this was going to be really competitive. We have some really fun and great teams. Now we're looking at a situation where is it Atlanta's to lose right now? Or, I mean, what's going on with the NFC South? They're really banged up.
Yeah. The Falcons, it would be nice if they had a few more big time games and prime time for Cousins, but they've only got one more of those, I think, this season. But yeah, it's just one of those cases where the injury bug is bit the entire division, and we knew the Panthers were not going to be good coming in, but the Saints looked good after the first couple of weeks, and then they've gone out and lost 5 in a row. Now they got Spencer Rattler in there who looks like garbage. Yeah, I mean, I'd say right now probably Atlanta is the favorite. I didn't really think too much of this division coming into the season, and then it looked like they were going to be good. But yeah, I would probably still pick Atlanta to win the division and probably get bounced in the first round, likely by, take your pick between Green Bay and Detroit and Minnesota, whoever doesn't win that division. But yeah, it's one of those tough things where it even hurt my fantasy league. I had Chris Godwin in 2 of my leagues, and now he's gone, and probably should not have been playing at the time where he got that injury in that game as well. Not great game management. But yeah, I mean, I would probably say the Falcons are probably the favorite to win the division, but I don't see them going far when it comes to playoffs.
It's funny for us. We were talking about New Orleans as a Super Bowl contender when we were last here, and now they've lost 5 straight. Now there's rumors that Dennis Allen, head coach, may be fired, and they may just reset the team. Congrats to Alvin Kamara, inking a 2-year contract extension for $40 million, and apparently is playing through a broken hand. Shout out to him. The O-line for them is decimated with injuries. Their 2 skill receivers are out. Taysom Hill is out. Their top corner's out. Their defense is mediocre. And Spencer Rattler is throwing picks out there and not throwing touchdowns. And good news for our Niner fans, because we take on Tampa Bay after the bye week. No Chris Godwin, no Mike Evans. That means we're more likely to win. I don't know if that's true with all the Niners' issues, but it makes it more realistic. And would you like to apologize to Bo Nix because you were rattling him off the last time we were here, and right now he's got the Denver Broncos playing.
Look. I have a couple of friends who are who are very big Bo Nix fans, and look, I will start writing my apology note. I'm not going to submit it just yet because I still think that you have to give major credit to how well Denver's defense has been playing out there. They've had a couple of AFC Defense Players of the Week recently, and so I have to still give a lot of credit to how well they've been playing defensively. They also, Javonte Williams has been running the ball very well the last couple of weeks too. But I will give credit to Bo Nix. I think a perfect comparison, though, to Bo Nix, at least the way I'm seeing this season so far with Denver, is it reminds me of, 2011 Tim Tebow? It like almost completely parallels and looks like the Tim Tebow season right now. So we can see Bo Nix have a good year. I'm still going to say right now he's getting carried by his defense a little bit, and I'm not ready to jump on the Bo Nix bandwagon train, but credit to the Broncos for finding a way to go 4-3 and look like they have an outside chance of maybe making the postseason. I'll give him that much props. I'm not going to give him all the props yet. He needs to show me a little more.
And in their division, they could probably finish second because the Chargers' inconsistencies on offense, they lose on a walk-off field goal by to the Arizona Cardinals. Though shout out Jim Harbaugh, he's turned them into the number one defense in the league. Yes, the LA Chargers have the number one defense in the league. They used to be mocked for how badly their defense played, and now they're number one, but they can't score on offense for some reason. And the Raiders, who are dysfunctional, just traded Devontae, and now they're going with Gardner Minshew again, and he threw 3 picks in that loss to the LA Rams. So, I mean, they could finish second with how well they're playing. And shout out Pat Surtain playing like his all-pro CB self. Cody Barton recovered a fumble for a touchdown in that game. Nick Bonito's having a hell of a year, leading the team in sacks. But no, but going back to the NFC South, they're a banged-up division, but if Atlanta can get its offense right, they'll probably win it. But you never know with Kirk Cousins. It's Kirktober right now, but it usually comes to an end after that, especially in primetime. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Aaron, thank you so much once again for jumping on here with us. We always enjoy your content. It's always a pleasure to have you. We love doing it. We love seeing you. And, keep up the great work with your Patreon blog. I've read it. It's fantastic. You do a hell of a job. So thank you again so much.
Yep, thank you very much for having me. I always appreciate chat.
Well, that's going to do it for the TD Drives podcast. We'll see you next week. Have a great night. Enjoy the NBA and peace out.